Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe and connecting the world by story. And tonight, or this afternoon, or this morning, wherever you are in this world, we are discovering some naughty, mischievous, and very tricky girl. And as if, as a visual aid, you just had a few passing by in the background, as if to reinforce the point. So, without further ado, can you put your hands together and welcome onto our virtual stage, Sarah Lloyd Winder!
Woo! What an introduction. That's lovely. And I feel very virtual tonight because I'm virtually in the woods that I've just walked the dog in. Because I've had to change
virtual or
round.
virtuous?
Oh, I'm very virtuous as well. Oh, yes, of course. No, I'm a naughty girl, as the story needs. So, there was once a father and a mother who were going on a pilgrimage to Mecca. But they were going to leave their little girl behind. She was very precious to them. And so they got a very good young woman to look after her. She was good. She was fun. But they thought she might be responsible. And there was their mistake. She was good and she was very good fun, but I'm not sure she was very responsible. Anyway, the parents had gone. The servants had cooked tea and closed the doors and locked the shutters. And at night, when it was dark, the little girl and her carer, we will say, started to have fun. Oh, they got up and they sang and they danced and they chatted and perhaps they even told stories. And they were getting so excited with their dancing that they kicked over the lamp and oil went everywhere and it was dark. And the little girl was afraid of the dark. What are we going to do now? The servants have gone downstairs and locked the doors and it's dark. It'll be dark all night. So the girl who was caring said, "Don't worry, we will think of something." I'm very good at thinking of things. What if we tie all the sheets together and I go out the window and I just nip along the street and find some oil? And it just seemed like a perfect plan. In the light of day, it might not have been a perfect plan, but at that time of night, when they'd been very naughty and dancing and there was oil all over the place, it seemed logical. Oh, well, let's just tie our sheets together and I'll nip down onto the street. And she did. I've always thought it would be very difficult to tie your sheets together and climb down, but she was a clever girl. And she took the basket with her and told the girl, "Now keep back in the room, don't let anybody know, and I'll be back soon." And off went our young lady. Now, what I haven't said is she was a very beautiful young lady and very witty and very clever. And she walked up the road and it was dark, the end of the evening. And she saw a little restaurant with the owner packing everything up. And he was a nice young man. And she attracted his attention and they started to chat. And she was very careful and she was very nice. And she started asking about all the things in the room and she saw then that he piled up all the rest of the food on the table and oh, did it look lovely. And her tummy started to rumble. And so she asked about that big pot over there. What's that? Oh, oil, he said. Oh, that big pot there. What's that? Nuts, he said. That big pot over there. What's that? Honey, he said. And without the blink of an eye, she said, "What's honey?" Now, perhaps he didn't believe her at first, but she was straight-faced and very I don't know what honey is. You know, I'm not from round here. I've only recently come. I'm from a long way. What is honey? So he went over to the pot and he took off the lid, and he looked inside and said, that is honey. Oh, she said. Really? What does it taste like? And so he reached right down inside the pot, and you know, it was a long way inside the pot, and he reached down and down and down. And she was wicked. She was a naughty girl. And she picked up his legs and she dropped him in the pot. Put the lid back on. And she got a basket and she filled it with all the lovely things on the table. And she picked up some lamp oil. And she was back down the street before he could splutter and mutter and fall out the pot. And she was back shinning up the sheets. Pulled the sheets in, closed the window, and the two girls sat there, midnight feast, with the lamp oil. Oh, it was yummy, and even better for the trick. Now, the next night, the two girls were being a bit more careful. Again, they'd had their dinner. The servants had gone. The doors had been locked. And they were trying not to be too extravagant in their dancing this evening. But then the little girl said, you said you'd teach me polka. What polka? Now, if you don't know, polka is a great dance. It goes step together, step, hop, step together, step, hop, and you can do it half turning as well. Step together, step, hop, turn, step together. And they were soon pottering round the room, getting faster and faster until, oh no, the lamp. Crash! Oil on the floor. Oh no, said the little girl. We've used up all the oil again and it'll be dark and I'll be scared. Don't worry, said our clever girl, who was so wicked. And again, she shinned down the sheets and she took her basket and she went to the restaurant. And she looked at the boy. And he was a bit grumpy. She said, what would you really like to do? Well, he looked really grumpy. He's like, he would like to. She said, you'd like to kiss me, wouldn't you? And he looked and he thought, yes, I would. But she was very careful and she said, should we sit down and talk? And so they sat down at a table where there was food and she ate. And there was wine, and she kept putting more and more wine in his glass and more wine, and she had none. And she fed his glass with more and more wine, and she had none, until he was so drunk. He was incapable. And she giggled. And she tied him up on the chair, and she tied a gag round his mouth, and she stole all the food and some lamp oil and ran back. And up she shinned and home. Oh! And that night they had another lovely feast. Weren't they wicked and naughty girls? But they were happy. Well, the next day, the boy was out for revenge. He disguised himself as a rose seller and walked up and down the road shouting, roses, roses for sale. The two girls looked out the window. And the little one, knowing the whole story, said, ooh, that looks lovely. Do you want a rose? But the girl, the wicked, wonderful girl, said, you know who it is? It's the restaurant owner and he's trying to catch us out. Oh, what are we going to do? Said the little girl. I know, said our wicked girl. And she threw down the rope of sheets. Climb up, she said to the rose seller, and we will pick one of your roses. And he climbed up and up. And just before he got to the top, she cut the sheets and he fell down onto the streets, roses and disguise scattered to the winds. Well, no more running out for either of the girls. And the parents came back very soon. And the parents were very happy with their lovely daughter and the beautiful carer. And she had looked after their daughter so well. What would you like? What would you like? I don't know, said the girl. But the very next morning, something more exciting turned up. An offer for the girl. The restaurant owner wanted to buy her for a very high price. Now the father told the girl, our naughty, wicked girl. And she could say no, she definitely could say no. But she looked at him and said, I know now what I would like as a reward from you. And yes, I will accept. I would like a doll as tall as me, made out of rubber, dressed like me, looking like me, that says yes, yes. And the father was very confused, as you would be. But he said, okay. And the very next day, the girl was packed into a carriage, along with this very strange rubber doll. And round to a house round the corner she went. Oh, she knew who had organised it. And when she got to the house, she laid out all her things in the room that was left for her. And in the rubber doll, she put sherbet, red sherbet in the tummy, and she poured down its throat pomegranate juice, the sweetest of juice. And then she stood it up in her glorious clothes in the middle of the room. And she went and hid in the cupboard. Our wicked, witty girl. She didn't have to wait long. In came the restaurant owner, all angry and furious, with a knife. Things have got suddenly very difficult. And he went up to the girl and said, do you remember pushing me in the honey pot? And the doll slightly pushed, rocked backwards and forwards, saying, yes, yes. Do you remember tying me up? Pushing the doll, and the doll went, yes, yes. And then, do you remember when I tried to sell you a rose, you cut me down in the street? Yes, yes, went the doll. And the restaurant owner, he lifted a knife and he stabbed the doll. And sherbet spat out like a red, sickly, sweet spray all over him. And he cried, how could I have done that to the girl with the sweetest taste in all the world? And at that point, the girl, the wicked, naughty, lovely girl who was hiding in the closet, could resist no more. And she leapt out of the cupboard and she laughed at him and said, that serves you right for trying to kill me. But I am here. And it is said that they lived a happy life, although with such a naughty, wicked, lovely girl, I think their life was probably very exciting and full of lots of mad escapades. For she was a very wicked girl. Thank you.
That is a beautiful start. Right, that's kind of like that's way up there on a naughty scale. We like that. Norman, where are you going to go? Where are you taking us?
I don't think I can be that. My little girl can be that naughty. But if I was such a naughty girl, I think she should make a deal with a publishing house to produce her autobiography in segments. The story I'm about to tell comes from the United States, and I looked up the Gunny Wolf, and I wasn't there. Some see it as an Appalachian tale that was done by Wilhelmina Harper back in the, I think, 1918. Others saw it as an African or African American, but it's one of those stories that seems to be infinitely adaptable. You can just take the frame of the story and do what you want with it because it's all fun. Well, it all starts very much like as Sarah's background. Uh, there was once a house in a clearing by the edge of the forest where a mother lived with her little daughter by the edge of the great green forest. And every day the mother would say to little daughter, there are many wild and fierce creatures in the forest, but the wildest and the fiercest is the gunny wolf. The gunny wolf has long, shaggy fur, big, big, shaggy ears, and long, sharp teeth and bright, burning eyes. So, little daughter, never, ever go into the forest unless I'm with you, because the gunny wolf will get you. Yes, mother, said the little daughter, but she looked out the window and into the light and shadows of the forest, and she let out a deep sigh, because you know where she really wanted to be. Now, one day, little daughter was playing outside near a bramble bush, and it was a very bad, naughty bramble bush, because you see, that bramble bush scratched her clothes and tore her clothes until they were nothing but tatters and shreds. And when little daughter went in for lunch, her mother took one look at little daughter and said, "Oh, little daughter, your clothes, your dress, your shirt are nothing but tatters and shreds." "It was a bramble bush out there where I was playing," said little daughter. "It was very bad indeed to tear my clothes the way it did." "Well," said the mother, "I'm afraid I have to go into the village to buy some cloth to make you some new clothes. Now, while I am away, you are to stay inside the yard. Don't go into the forest because that's where the gunny wolf lives." "Yes, mother," said little daughter, and once more she looked deep into the shadows of the forest. So the mother left, and little daughter sat there for a moment or two, and then she went outside to play once again, but now she was alone. And so she looked around and thought, "Mother works so hard to make clothes and get other things for me, and I think I should get her a gift for when she comes back. And there are some beautiful yellow flowers growing near the forest, and I think I'll pick a few of those flowers, because near the forest isn't in the forest. So I think I can pick those." And so she went over to where the yellow flowers were growing, and she began to pick them one by one by one. And as she picked the flowers, she went, "Kum qua kiwa, kum qua ki mo." Oh, she saw some beautiful blue flowers, just like Hannah's background, a dark, mysterious color. And she says, "Mother loves blue as well." And those flowers are growing on the edge of the forest. And the edge of the forest isn't in the forest, so I can pick those as well. And so she began to pick the blue flowers one by one, singing her song. "Kum qua kiwa, kum qua ki mo." Oh, and what did she see growing just inside the forest? Most beautiful, brilliant red flower, just like John's hat. And she thought to herself, that red flower is growing just inside the forest. And if I run in and pick it, why, then I will have the flower that is mother's favorite color, and the gunny wolf won't catch me. And so she ran into the forest, she picked the red flower, and there was another one further on. And she went to pick that one. And there was another, and another, and another, until at last she was going deeper and deeper in the forest, singing her song. "Kum qua kiwa, kum qua ki mo." Snap. Oh. And she stopped and looked up, 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 way up, into the great shaggy head of the gunny wolf. He had long, shaggy fur. He had great, enormous ears, bright, burning eyes, and long, sharp teeth. In a deep, growly voice, he said, "Little girl, why are you in my forest? Why for you move in my forest?" And she says, "I no move. I no move. I just pick some flowers and sing a song." "Oh," said the gunny wolf, "sing that good and song for me then." And little daughter was nervous, but she sang. Kumquat kiwa, kumquat kimo. And as she sang, that great shaggy head began to nod. Those bright burning eyes began to shut. And the gunny wolf fell asleep. Thump! And he lay there on the forest floor snoring. Grr, grr, grr. And little daughter began to tiptoe right past that great shaggy head. Pit-a-pat, 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 pit-a-pat. She began to run. Pit-a-pat, pit-a-pat, pit-a. And behind her she could hear hunker-chaw, hunker-chaw, hunker-chaw. It was the gunny wolf, and he stopped her. He stopped her right there. And he said, "Why for you run in my forest, little girl?" "I no run," she said. "Oh, then sing that goodly song for me again," he said. And little daughter knew what would happen this time. And so she began to sing once more. Kumquat kiwa, kumquat kimo. And once more that great shaggy head began to nod, those burning eyes shut, and the gunny wolf fell asleep on the forest floor. Thump! And once more, gunny wolf snores filled the forest. Grr, grr. And she began to run. And she ran, pit-a-pat, 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 pit-a-pat. And she heard behind her, hunker-chaw, hunker-chaw, hunker-chaw. And the gunny wolf stopped her right at the edge of the forest. There was her house where she would be safe. But the gunny wolf said to her, "Little daughter, sing that goodly song for me again." And this time she began to sing once more. Kumquat kiwa, kumquat kimo. Thump! Gunny wolf fell asleep. And gunny wolf snores filled the forest and the clearing as she began to tiptoe towards her house. Pit-a-pat, 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 pit-a-pat. Behind her, the gunny wolf had woken up and was running after her. Hunker-chaw, hunker-chaw, hunker-chaw. And she reached the door. She turned around. She took half the flowers and she threw them at the gunny wolf, and they hit him on the nose. Bam! And while he was stopped, she ran into the into the house, and shut the door. And there stood the gunny wolf, surrounded by red, blue, and yellow flowers. No one had ever given him flowers before. And so the gunny wolf gathered them up in his great shaggy paws, went into the forest, and gave them to his mother, because even a gunny wolf has a mother. While little daughter remained inside the house all the rest of that day, until her mother came back from the village bearing bolts of colored cloth, of red and blue and yellow cloth. And she put the cloth down and she said, "Oh, little daughter, did anything happen while I was away?" "Oh, nothing really," said little daughter. "I picked some flowers for you." And the mother took the flowers, red, yellow, and blue, and put them into a vase. And after that, it was time for supper. And after supper, it was time for a bath. And after the bath, it was time for bed. The little daughter jumped into the bed. She pulled up the blanket underneath her chin. And she turned towards her mother with bright, shining eyes. She said, "Oh, mother, mother, sing that goodly song for me that you sing every night." And the mother smiled, and she began to sing. Kumquat kiwa, kumquat kimo. And soon little daughter was fast asleep, and she didn't snore at all.
Mm. Oh, it's beautiful. Ah. I think you should always be disobedient as long as you come out of it okay at the end.
That's right. So,
And talking of disobedient, naughty girls. Well, the naughtiest of girls try to make a living in the theatre. And then when the theatre isn't quite naughty enough for them, they decide they will travel round telling stories. That is lying for a living. And how naughty is that? So, for our third and final story for tonight of the naughty girls, we will. It's probably ideologically unsound to introduce you as the naughty Hannah Brailsford. So I wouldn't do that.
Of course not, John.
Because I'm not that sort of compare. So the almost naughty Hannah Brailsford. Can you please put your hands together and welcome Hannah Brailsford on to the stage?
Oh, thank you, John, very much. Well, I do like stories of naughty girls, surprisingly, John. So it was quite difficult to choose one, but I thought I'd tell you one actually I haven't told for a long time. And it goes a little bit like this. Now, just like Norman told us, sometimes little girls don't heed the advice of their mothers. And sometimes little girls don't heed the advice of their grandmothers. And we know that it's bad enough not to heed the advice of your mother, but not to listen to your grandmother. Well, that way, disaster lies. And this particular little girl, she had a wonderful grandmother, a grandmother that told her the most amazing stories. But being a naughty little girl, she always thought that her grandmother was just telling her stories. What she didn't realise is that the stories that her grandmother told were really warnings, were really very important pieces of advice. And there was one story that she loved above all. It was the story of the fly-by-night. Granny, Granny, please, please, please tell me the story again of the fly-by-night. Very well, my dear. Now remember, when the moon is waning, if you hear a tap, tap, tap on your window when you are snuggled up tight, you must never, ever get up and go to the window and open your curtains. For if you do, you will see the fly-by-night. And the grandmother continued to tell her daughter, her granddaughter, all about that fly-by-night. Well, a little while later, the moon had done its course and was indeed beginning to wane. And that very night, our little girl was tucked up tight in bed, when on her window there was a tap, 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 tap. Now, at first, she just thought maybe it was the wind. And so she took the covers and she brought them a little tighter up around her chin. But the tapping continued. Tap, tap, tap. Being a naughty little girl, she decided that she needed to see what was making the tap, tap, tap. It won't be a fly-by-night. That's just the story that Grandma tells. And so she went up to her window. She drew back the curtain. She looked out. She couldn't see anything. All she could see was that moon in the sky, that moon that had been so full and was now waning. I knew it. I knew Grandma was just telling me a story. There is no such thing as the fly-by-night. And she turned to go back to her bed. Tap, tap, tap. She quickly turned round again. And there, hovering outside her window, was the very thing her grandmother had told her about in the stories. There, hovering in the light of the waning moon, was a flying cat with flaming eyes just like Norman's gunny was. And on the back of the flying cat was the strangest little man with the strangest little hat and flying goggles. A hat not unlike John's, but he wasn't as beautiful as John. No, he was strange and very unusual, as if he had been dipped in honey, like in Sarah's story, and covered in nuts. The strangest creature she'd ever seen. Now, you'd think at that point she would remember the story that she loved so much, and she would quickly close the curtain and get back into bed and put the covers over her head. But no, because she was a naughty girl who didn't listen to her grandma, who didn't listen to the advice that stories give, and instead she went up to the window and she opened the window, and the cat meowed. And the little man said, "Ba, ba, ba, I have come far, journey with me, my pretty." The cat hovered round, lowered its tail, and the little man moved further up the cat, making room for the girl. Now, this is the point where she could have remembered the story and gone back to bed, but no! Instead, she climbed out the window, jumped on the cat, and whoosh, they were off, flying through the night air, flying up towards that waning moon. And she was so excited. This wasn't like Granny said. Granny had said it was dangerous to go with the fly-by-night, but this was thrilling, up, up, up into the night sky, until they were dancing amongst the stars, and suddenly she looked down below and she realized how far they'd come, and she began to grow frightened, and she said, I've changed my mind. I don't want to fly with you anymore. Please take me home. I'm too far from home. Ba, 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 I have come far. You must come with me. Shall we see? Oh, my pretty. No, I don't want to see any more. I want to go home. Please, my mum will be missing me, and my grandma's going to be very angry. Please, please. You're no fun. Well, what's done is done. Let's go! Whee! And with that, he was off again. Off, flying through those stars, higher and higher, getting closer and closer to the moon. And the little girl was like, no, please, please, I want to go home. Oh, said the little man. Very well. Down we'll go. Down, 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 down to the Dingley Dell. And with that, they were shooting down back through the night sky, down faster than the girl could ever have imagined that a flying cat and a man with a strange hat and little goggles could ever go. And they were getting closer and closer and closer to the ground. Although she was happy that she was going home, she was scared of how they were going to land. But just as it looked as though they were going to hit the ground, whoosh, the cat hovered just above the ground and then landed, as only a cat can do, perfectly on its paws. The girl quickly climbed off, and then she looked around. This isn't my home. I said I wanted to go home. Oh well. Welcome to the Dingley Dell. Bye. Farewell. And with that, the fly-by-night did what all fly-by-nights do. Dingley Dell was in fact a deep, dark forest. And the little girl was scared, for she had heard those other stories that her grandmother had told her. She knew about the gunny wolf. She knew about all the wolves. She knew about the bears too, and the porridge. And she didn't want to be in the deep, dark woods. She wanted to be at home in her bed, having sweet, sweet dreams, having listened to her grandma's story. She didn't know what to do. Just want to go home. And so she sat down in the middle of that deep, dark forest. And she did what naughty girls do when they don't listen to their grandmothers. She cried. There was a whisper from the trees. Will naughty girls never learn? Do they never listen to the stories? And then there was a whisper from inside the trees as bright eyes appeared. The creatures of the forest, the owls and the squirrels. The naughty girls never listen. Do they never listen to the story? Well, of course, this didn't help the girl's mood at all. She just continued to cry. And then there was a third voice, a much nicer voice, which said, hush, hush, my child. Don't cry. I think you've learnt your lesson. Come, I will help you home. And she looked around, and there was no one there. And then she looked up, and she realised it was the moon herself that was talking to her. But how? How will I get home? Follow my light through the forest to the stream. There, I will guide you. And so the little girl followed the light that the moon created down to the stream at the far end of the woods. All the time, those tutting trees and tutting creatures telling her off for being so naughty and not listening to stories, but she kept going until she came to the stream, and there the moon summoned a huge lily pad. Step upon my lily pad, and I will take you home. And so the girl stepped upon the lily pad, and the moon summoned a soft breeze and blew her all the way back to her house. She ran back to her house. she ran back to her house. And being a very trusting neighbourhood, her mother had left the door open, and she went into her house and she ran up and she climbed into bed. She put those covers over her head. And she vowed from that day that she would always listen to her grandmother's stories. And she would never, ever be taken in by the fly-by-night again. But naughty girls sometimes grow into naughty ladies. Afraid to say that she forgot her grandmother's tales. And once more she got caught by a fly-by-night. Where she ended, well, that is another tale.
What a wonderful trio of stories. Thank you, Hannah. And of course, the naughtiest of all, and I haven't actually got the tale, but I know about these creatures. They come from where Yuliu, who has been driving the bus tonight and has been at the controls up in Transylvania, up in the forest up there. There's the old lady of the forest, there's Mama Padule. But her daughters don't go against her wishes. The fatter Padule. And they're like sirens. And should you be a young man who strays into the forest, and should you come across these incredibly attractive creatures, the likelihood of you ever coming out of that forest again is remote. But for tonight, I must thank Hannah Brailsford, round of applause, and for that wonderful telling. My only disappointment, well, actually it wasn't disappointment, because she did, in fact, you had her being caught again and what happened. But she did temporarily take some notice of her grandmother.
She did.
She did. And Norman, yours just managed to cover their sins a little bit, but yours probably takes the prize for trickiness, but the prize for naughtiness, for absolute naughtiness, because the central character of the story, the heroine, is totally unrepentant, has to go to Sarah's character. And a big round of applause for the ultimate naughtiness. Can we give a round of applause to Sarah Lloyd Winder? Oh, fantastic. And there was Alistair, so he's just apologised for being late at the party. Just catch up with it later, because that story is definitely worth anyone who missed it. I love it. It's just totally, absolutely unrepentant. Fantastic. We had this wonderful trio of storytellers with us. In fact, we've got more than the trio of storytellers. We've got six storytellers up there that I can see on the thing. So we'll retire to the bar. We'll swap tales of naughtiness. And Stephanie, nice to see you. And there's the reason for tonight. Am I allowed to tell them why there are naughty? Why we have story? Stephanie had a request when I was talking. So I don't know what to do. I've got to think of themes for Monday. She said, "Why don't you do Naughty Girl?"
And then
so
Idiot Boys.
It's her fault. and it was brilliant. It was a brilliant idea, because we've had some fantastic stories. But we'll retire for for a bevy in the bar if we're or have a little chat amongst each other. Unmute yourselves. Alistair and Jan, you can unmute. And Cheryl down the bottom. Cheryl who remains unseen.
It's lovely to see you, Bob. You're not looking very naughty, though. You're looking very virtuous there.
Bob's got a kind of preacher quality amongst in that stance with the books and stuff behind him.
Is that because boys are never naughty?
Yeah,
well,
There's
obviously we're all virtuous.
in the neighborhood here.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Those were all wonderful stories. Thanks.
Thank you.
And Norman, I don't think I've ever heard a reference to the Gunny Wolf's mother before.
That is
Everything
an
has a mother.
add-on. It's a friend of mine who told me the story, and so I like that part, and I added the part about the mother singing the song to her daughter, because that, to my mind, is the bond between the mother and the daughter.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's also a mother giving a child a get out of jail free card.
That's right. Now, who has not heard of the story of the Gunny Wolf? Okay.
I know the story, but I don't know it as the Gunny Wolf. I know a different version of the story. But it's still a wolf, but I hadn't heard it as the Gunny Wolf, so that was lovely to hear that.
What is a gunny wolf? What is the gunny bit of the wolf?
He's got big ears and lots of hair and sharp teeth, Sarah. Weren't you listening to the story?
Yeah, but that's a wolf. What's
I
the
looked
difference
it up.
between a wolf and a gunny wolf?
I looked it up, and as far as I could tell, he's called that because he's called that.
That's a good answer.
You have the grey wolf, the black wolf, the white wolf, and the gunny wolf. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because he has a mother.
Yeah. This is Mr. Gunny Wolf and Mrs. Gunny Wolf Senior.
Gunny is a very rough material. Is it that he's coarse and uncultured?
Yeah.
Ah.
You
Yeah, I
know,
think of him as a big burlap bag with
Yeah.
hair and teeth.
Right back.
there's a bit of me though that mishears it as Gummy Bear and listens and links it to there's a new form of Gummy Bear and it's a Gummy Wolf.
Is it low sugar?
Yeah, low sugar wolf.
No, the Fly by Night. I wanted to.
Oh,
Is that a
nice.
literary tale?
It's sort of it's part adapted, and it's one that actually it's from the marvelous Terry Jones. I don't know if you know Terry Jones from the Monty Python, and he wrote a couple of books actually of sort of modern fairy tales, and I did so it's sort of a bit of Terry and a bit of Hannah.
It's a bit like a Will o' the Wisp, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And Sarah, while we're on, where did you go? Where did yours come from?
It's a traditional Turkish tale.
Oh, it's
Yeah, but the girl is a slave girl, and I don't like that bit. So I've got to find a name for her. Our wicked girl and the little girl, and you know. And
I like her. I like her as Wicked Girl.
Yeah. But yeah, it's from Turkey, and I can see a street in Istanbul, and I tell the story from Istanbul. I just see it all in my mind, and she goes down, and it's just along the road. But I started the story because I was looking for stories about dolls.
Mm.
And the first time I told it, it wasn't like that at all. It was much lighter. It didn't have him stabbing her at the end. But in the story, he stabs her with a knife. And she forgives him and marries him. He's, they're both loonies.
Well, she's pure trickster, isn't she? She is.
Yes.
She's not just naughty. She's pure trickster.
That's it. And she
You know,
doesn't
I
care.
mean, putting the doll and everything is Brer Rabbit is tricksters from the world over.
Yeah. So it's red sherbet in the tummy and pomegranate juice in the mouth. And I love that. I love those little touches that are just, make you feel sweet and oozing, that sort of. Yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah. Well, that was cool. That was a really nice. It was a really nice session. Stephanie, I know you've gone off somewhere, but thank you for suggesting that. 2 weeks. I haven't the
welcome.
I haven't the faintest idea what next week's theme is.
It'll have to be bad boys, won't it?
You have to be incompetent boys.
Did you say incompetent boys, Stephanie?
Yeah.
I thought that was you.
The Advertising Standards Authority has spoken on this.
Call it the Teddy Boys session.
Yeah. So there's every possibility that next week's are going to be incompetent, foolish, and whatever boys. But the week after that is we get serious. We're having an international panel. Mike Rust, who's the director of Get a Word in Edgeways in the UK, Antonio Huesca, who was on Sunday night, but he can represent both North and South America because he's Brazilian living in Maine.
Beautiful movements yesterday, didn't he?
Yeah, oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. And then and Zuha, one of our Moroccan storytellers, is coming on, and I'll probably I want to ask one of the Indian women storytellers, and if I can get Georgiana from Romania, but I haven't said that yet because I haven't asked her. And she's never appeared in my tent, so she doesn't know to do as she's told. And but we're discussing the whole discussion, and there'll be a panel, and they'll give their bits from their part of the world. But it's where how storytelling is developing, where it is next, not just post-COVID, but the whole development of it, how it's changing. How it's changing in this country from where it was at the beginning of the revival with Company of Storytellers and Emerson College and stuff, and then how it's changing in Morocco, moving off the square, and all those changes. It's where it's going in the future, and so that's going to be a really good discussion. Everyone can leap in after. I shall chair it, but I'll probably throw me oar in as well. And this week, because she's in my centre panel at the moment, doing the children's session on Friday, is Jan Williams, another Essex girl. Well, she's an adopted Essex girl. She was dragged over from Wales. I mean, she travelled from Wales to Essex, and Sunday. We had the wonderful Colin Irwin, who I met at, I've only met virtually, but I met him on Liz Weir's Saturday night thing, who's Northern Irish, and he's a singer-songwriter and storyteller. So I'm really looking forward to Sundays. So it's a full week coming up. And there's, of course, Kingdom 1000 tomorrow, and then another set from Rory McLeod on Wednesday, who's on pre-recorded, and Morocco on Thursday, and Jan on Friday. So we hope to see you all, and it's nice to see you coming on regularly, Bob. Fantastic. You can throw on that panel thing. You can on the discussion afterwards. I will expect an opinion from you. And you, Norman. So, and Alistair. In fact, I'll expect an opinion from all of you. But for now, good night and thank you very much. And thank you, Yudio, for driving the bus.
Good night.